top law enforcement officials in the fight against California's crime crisis. I'd like to welcome my very own Sheriff, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. We also have the El Dorado County District Attorney, Pearson is here. We have San Bernardino Chief of Police, Darren Goodman, Riverside Chief of Police, Larry Gonzalez, and former San Bernardino Deputy Sheriff, Megan McCarthy. And we also are pleased to welcome Harriet Salerno and Anna Berry with Crime Victims United. We are here today to have an honest conversation about the state of public safety in California. The men and women here behind me, they are the adults in the room. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're actually going to talk about public safety. Let's be clear. The elected leaders in the building behind us have failed the people of California with years of soft-on-crime, pro-criminal legislation, which has created scenes of violence and lawlessness that have become synonymous with California. Can anyone say we are safer today than we were when Democrats took a supermajority in our legislature over a decade ago? Objectively and unequivocally, the answer is no. According to Public Policy Institute of California, 76% of California adults say violence and street crime is a serious issue. The California Department of Justice data paints a bleak portrait. The homicide rate in California has risen 23.9% from 2017 to 2022, with a 6.1 increase in overall violent crime and 6.2 increase in property crime year over year. Nevertheless, our government has stayed the course, pursuing disastrous, dangerous policy platforms that put criminals over victims, diversion over punishment, and politics over people. The time for playing political games is over. It's time to put public safety over politics. That is why today I'm announcing my public safety legislative package, which will accomplish three specific things. Number one, it will restore the firearm sentencing enhancement. Number two, it will require an armed police officer on every school campus. And three, it will remove anti-police bias from juries. Before I invite some of the distinguished members of our law enforcement community to speak about the importance of these bills, I'd like to hand over the podium to my sheriff, Chad Bianco, who has seen firsthand what California's failed policies, including AB 109 and Prop 47, has done to our communities. Sheriff, please welcome.
Good morning. Chad Bianco, Riverside County Sheriff. We are here today because California public safety is in crisis. Crime is steadily on the rise, and our public safety policy is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the nation. I want to make this clear, and I want there to be no mistake in what I am saying. This is not by accident. The driving force in our crisis is a radical, progressive agenda fraudulently called criminal justice reform. This is nothing short of a sick and twisted social experiment where law enforcement is the bad guy and criminals are somehow victims of society and not responsible for their actions, their crimes, or accountable to their countless victims. This agenda began with the passage of AB 109, the so-called Public Safety Realignment Act. State government failed to take responsibility for prison overcrowding or their failure to build more prisons, and instead forced county jails to house state inmates while simultaneously releasing thousands of felons early. This has pushed our county jails to a near collapse and caused the early release of countless criminals. Thousands upon thousands of criminals are being released from custody early, crime is increasing, and our governor is closing prisons instead of building new ones. It defies common sense. In 2014, a complete fraud was perpetrated in California. The so-called Safe Streets and Safe Schools Initiative, Prop 47, changed many felonies to misdemeanors, basically legalized drug use, and increased the amount of petty theft to nearly $1,000. In 2016, another lie was perpetrated on voters with the naming and wording of Prop 57, tricking voters into approving the release of thousands of violent criminals onto our streets and neighborhoods. This is why we are here. Everyone knows Prop 47 and 57 are disasters, and yet Governor Newsom adamantly touts it as a success, and lawmakers continue to refuse to fix their mistake and the problems that they have created. When once crimes are no longer crimes, it allows Governor Newsom and Attorney General Bonta to cite completely flawed data points to support their failures. Californians are now suffering the consequences of a failed social agenda. We are now at our breaking point, and Californians have had enough. The lie of Prop 47 has been exposed, and the progressive love affair with criminals at the expense of victims has infuriated law-abiding Californians. While we suffer every day with rampant theft causing our small businesses to close and our large box stores to move out of state, our supermajority of lawmakers sit here in their guarded tower, oblivious to what is going on in their communities, experiencing drastic increases in all crimes, particularly violent crimes. Over the past 5 years, law enforcement has been unable to get our progressive left majority to even consider any new law or modification to an existing law that would increase punishment or send criminals to prison. Reality has gone completely upside down to the point our governor, our lawmakers, and our attorney general refuse to prosecute criminals, to include those criminals committing crimes with guns, and instead have dedicated their efforts to disarm and remove constitutional protections of self-defense from law-abiding Californians. We are in a very important election year, and the political silliness is surfacing all around us. The same supermajority who refused any sort of tough-on-crime laws for the past several years are up for re-election. They are now claiming they are going to address our public safety crisis with new laws cracking down on crime. The problem is every one of their bills are disingenuous and hollow. For instance, one bill claims to address theft by lowering the felony limit back to $400. Upon examination of the bill, you will find that it gives these career criminals 3 more chances to steal and be convicted before they are sentenced to prison. That is 3, a minimum of 3 more victims. We cannot turn on the news, read the newspaper, go to the grocery store, or open our businesses without being slapped in the face of reality that criminals have been emboldened by a lenient system that holds no consequence for criminal behavior. Instead of addressing the obvious, tone-deaf Governor Newsom attacks a Target employee for not stopping a criminal from fleeing the store instead of taking an honest look at the failed social experiment that he himself leads that allowed that theft to occur. It is time we wake up and hold our politicians accountable for what their bills, laws, and policies have caused. It is time to return to a common sense approach to crime, realizing and admitting that there are evil people who refuse to conform to a civilized society and instead choose to victimize the rest of us by stealing our property, robbing our stores, flooding our streets with drugs, including fentanyl, breaking into our homes, murdering our children, and giving the middle finger to our justice system. Californians deserve better. I am proud to support lawmakers like Bill Essayli and several others who acknowledge that criminals are responsible for their actions and they need to be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Bianco. Retail theft has ballooned into one of the most foremost problems facing our business communities. Cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles are hotbeds of some of the most egregious organized retail theft rings in the country. According to LAPD, shoplifting in Los Angeles jumped a staggering 81% in 2023. Even the Democrat supermajority in the state assembly has been forced to admit that we have a problem. Yet their proposed solutions, as the sheriff said, are little more than smoke and mirrors. Their recently proposed bill by the Speaker and the chair of the so-called Select Committee on Retail Theft, AB 2943, is more of the same in a long list of policies that apply Band-Aids. Look, I'm going to tell you, I read the bill that they introduced last week that supposedly is going to fix our retail theft problem. The best word to describe it is illusory. It has the appearance of being tough on public safety, but it's not actually going to do anything. The bill creates one new law that will make it a crime for any person to possess property that was unlawfully acquired through shoplifting unless it's possessed for personal property. And that new law would also be served in county jail. I can go through this bill if you guys want to. We're going to take questions. Thank you. We're going to take questions, but this bill will not do anything. Every serious person has said the only way to fix the problem in California is to change Prop 47. And that is exactly what our district attorneys are working on. And so now I'd like to invite District Attorney Vern Pearson to speak at the podium.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here today to support these bills, as well as to talk about specifically about Prop 47, and as the sheriff indicated, this giant social science experiment that we all know is a failure. Over the last several weeks, several months actually, we've seen video after video of thefts taking place throughout the state of California. Well, any of us who've been into a Target or a Safeway or any other type of Walmart retailer such as that have seen for our own eyes what the governor just suddenly discovered in the last few weeks. That is that property crime is rampant in this state, and there is zero accountability for it. Last week, the legislature, the assembly leadership comes out and essentially says, we hear you, we hear the problem that's going on, and we're going to take responsibility. Rather than taking responsibility, they have behaved as though they think the most important thing is to rearrange the deck chairs on the deck of the Titanic. California is the most wealthy, populous, beautiful state in the nation, and yet we have the biggest problems because of this giant social science experiment. We need them to start taking it seriously rather than simply smoke and mirrors, window dressing, and as I said, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. They need to start doing something seriously about this. The bill that was just being referred to, or the bill package that was being referred to a few moments ago, what they say they're doing and what they claim to do is to increase penalties for property crimes, something that we all know needs to happen. The problem with it is they simply ignore the in furtherance of language which is contained within Prop 47, passed almost 10 years ago. Prop 47 says the legislature may only amend, in other words, they may only increase penalties for property crimes if it's returned to the electorate. The legislature can pass a meaningless bill this year, pat themselves on the back, go home, and tell the people they represent that they've done something, all the while knowing the DAs, the sheriffs, the chiefs of police, their own ledge council last year have told them that it must go back to the electorate or it will be ineffectual. The bottom line is they are content to mislead the public once again that they have a solution, knowing the solution violates Prop 47. Let me ask you a question for anybody here that's looking at this. Why don't you call the State Public Defenders Association? Don't take the word of the sheriffs. Don't take the word of the chiefs. Don't take the word of the elected district attorneys. And don't take the word of ledge counsel who works for the legislature. Go ask the state public defender whether or not you can add penalties for property crime without going back to the electorate. They clearly know you cannot. It cannot be done the way they're proposing to do it. We must return to the electorate to right the ship and this wrong social science experiment that has been perpetrated on the great state of California. Thank you. Sure. So the district attorneys, the sheriffs, the chiefs, let me go down the list. All of the various groups throughout the state of California have joined together with Walmart, Target, and a handful of other retailers to put an initiative on the street. The initiative will repeal and largely replace Prop 47 with a system that actually provides for accountability. And when you hear the words, the pushback that we hear is, well, we don't want to go back to the days of mass incarceration. This initiative does not create mass incarceration. Instead, what it does is to simply say, you either go to rehab or you go to jail. You will be held accountable if you don't go to rehab for possessing hardcore drugs, for stealing again and again. We have to increase the penalties for theft. We have to increase the penalties for fentanyl, possession of fentanyl. Right now, I mean, think about what's going on in our streets. In my county, in El Dorado County, some of the lowest crime in the state of California. Not just over 1 week ago, we had 4 ODs in one day. 4 deaths in one day. Several other people ODing from fentanyl. We have to do something real and change course on it. You can find out more about the initiative by simply contacting CDAA. I can give you the link for it to share it.
Thank you. And so, from my perspective, the politicians in this building broke our criminal justice system. They're not going to be trusted to fix it. The only people I trust to fix it and to reform Prop 47 are the elected district attorneys and the sheriffs of this state who have been dealing with its consequences for the last decade. So when politicians stand up and tell you they're going to fix property crimes, don't believe them. Believe our sheriffs, believe our DAs, believe our police chiefs, and now believe the mayors. Mayor, I believe, of San Francisco has supported their ballot initiative. London Breed. I think Karen Bass has come out.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Mahan from Santa Clara, and a whole host of other mayors.
A whole host of other mayors have come out in support of their initiative, which will fix Prop 47 once and for all. So I want to say I fully support and endorse that. The first bill that I'm introducing into the legislature today on my public safety package is Assembly Bill 3037, which will restore legitimate judicial discretion in applying the firearm enhancement in felony cases. Let me tell you really clearly what the firearm enhancement is. Since the Democrats love gun laws, this is a smart gun law. The laws they like to pass, I call them dumb laws that go after people like CCW holders. We like smart gun laws. A smart gun law says that if you use a gun to commit a felony in the state of California, you're going to serve an additional 10 years in prison. If you use that gun in the commission of a felony, you're going to serve an extra 20 years in prison. And if you discharge the gun, and heaven forbid you hurt somebody, you're going to serve an extra 25 years to life. That's the way it's always been in the state of California. That was a very effective tool to get dangerous people off the street and get them locked up so they can't hurt the public. The state of California passed this ridiculous bill, SB 81, a couple years ago, which took the discretion away from judges to impose the firearm enhancement. It says if they're going to get a sentence of over 20 years, the judge is not even allowed to impose it. So my bill is very simple. It's going to give judges back the discretion to punish people who use guns in the commission of a felony. And now I want to invite up the chief of the city of San Bernardino, Chief Goodman.
Good morning. I'm Police Chief Darren Goodman of the City of San Bernardino. And on behalf of the San Bernardino Police Department, its law-abiding residents and business owners, I'm here to express my support for Assembly Bill 3037, authored by Assemblyman Essayli. I'd also like to discuss the impacts of flawed legislation and the effects it's having on my city in particular. I want to thank Assemblyman Essayli for inviting us here and for always being a strong proponent of public safety. I have the distinction of being the police chief of one of the cities that's long been considered one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. While crime rates in our city and our reputation have improved over the years, we still face some significant challenges. And most of those challenges and threats come from right here in Sacramento. These legislators in this building have abandoned our residents. They've abandoned our business owners by creating criminal-friendly legislation that have made our streets less safe. As law enforcement professionals, we've been ringing the alarms for years and warning about the adverse impacts of legislation like Proposition 47 and 57. Yet, while the respective cities have deteriorated right before your very eyes, they've been telling you not to believe what you see. Each and every day on the news, you see reports, you see proof of smash and grab robberies, home invasion robberies, vehicle burglaries, assaults on city sidewalks, and other violent assaults happening every day on our streets. All sorts of lawlessness. Recently, the state police were deployed in Oakland because criminals have overrun the city so badly that In-N-Out Burger and other businesses have left the city. In San Francisco, in downtown, where once illustrious high-end retailers existed, they practically vanished. I'm not naming these cities to disparage them. I'm listing them because I'm trying hard to make sure that the city of San Bernardino is not next. But the stark reality is that every city in California is beholden to the same destructive policies that are coming out of Sacramento. So how long before my city or your city is next? We all must address the sheer fact that legislation enacted claiming to help the most vulnerable has in fact hurt them instead. I believe I can speak for everyone up here when I say that none of us believes that locking people up forever is the only solution. I believe strongly in redemption, second chances, and a holistic approach to criminal justice. However, none of that absolves us from our professional, moral, and legal obligation to protect the innocent from those who are committed to inflicting pain and evil upon them. Prison is not the only answer, but it should not be kept out of the equation. All too often, laws are passed with consequences eliminated in the name of protecting minority communities. These laws actually have the opposite effect. For example, in the city of San Bernardino, nearly 90% of our violent crime victims are minorities, and over 90% of our named suspects are minorities. Laws that are soft on consequences only benefit a small portion of the community while leaving a vast majority vulnerable. I find it very interesting how loud the mass incarceration narrative is when objecting to any legislation that could end up resulting in a black or brown person going to prison for a crime that they committed. However, those same people who profess to care so much about black and brown lives are eerily silent when black and brown bodies are being piled up in cemeteries because they're killing each other. Rather than continue to cater to the small percentage of people who shun rules at the cost of their neighbors, it's time to make common sense decisions to protect our communities as they work to enjoy their lives, raise families, free of fear of victimization. So once again, we're all here to ring the alarm again. Senate Bill 81 amended Penal Code 1385 to compel judges to dismiss enhancements if any mitigating circumstance exists. It also prohibited the court from imposing the firearm enhancement if the sentence would result in more than 20 years. This completely eliminated the enhancement in any case where a criminal use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. In short, the ambiguity and the latitude of qualifying mitigated circumstances makes it impossible for prosecutors to provide sufficient evidence to sustain enhancements, which requires a judge to dismiss the enhancements in virtually all situations. Essentially, this could mean that a criminal who commits an armed robbery with a loaded gun could go in and tell the judge that he or she was exposed to childhood trauma, and the judge would be required to dismiss that robbery, or at least the firearm component of it. The charge would then be lessened, and that individual would then be on the street sooner to potentially victimize more people. In the city of San Bernardino in 2022 and 2023, we had 97 robberies, 36 homicides, 20 carjackings, and 3 rapes that would have qualified for firearm enhancements. Assemblyman Essayli's proposed bill would return discretion to judges with respect to firearm penalty enhancements, thereby allowing each case to be evaluated on its merits. This should be a particular concern to all of us because enhancements are relevant for violent offenses that involve the use of a firearm. Current legislation has restricted judges' ability to enhance sentencing for such offenses, effectively tying their hands when faced with these violent offenders. This limitation is not a legal technicality. It's a dangerous loophole that allows violent predators to receive minimal penalties only to return to our neighborhoods and communities to victimize more innocent people. AB 3037 can fix it. And anyone who's serious about curbing gun violence and not just virtue signaling should support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That is such important and powerful testimony, not from a politician, but from the chief of police of one of the most largest and, unfortunately right now, one of the more dangerous cities in the state of California. So when he speaks, I think we should listen. The second bill that I'm introducing today is AB 3038, which will require at least one armed and specially trained police officer, known as a school resource officer, to be present on every K through 12 campus. California has experienced 96 school shootings between 2018 and 2023. If we want to get serious about preventing school shootings and stopping them before they can happen, we need good guys and girls with guns ready to act. Police response time can mean the difference between life and death in these tragic situations. I'd like to now invite Chief of Police of Riverside, Larry Gonzalez, to speak about this bill. Chief.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Good morning, everybody. My name is Larry Gonzalez. I'm the Chief of Police of the Riverside Police Department. I'm also the President of ARCOS, which is the Association of Riverside County Chiefs of Police and Sheriff. If you know what that is, that's basically myself along with 20 other agency department heads, along with Sheriff Bianco. We're extremely lucky here in Riverside County to have such a unified partnership amongst our law enforcement leaders. The other necessary component is to be successful is the unwavering support of our elected officials, such as the great support we receive from Assemblyman Bill Essayli. Having elected officials who are committed to supporting the law enforcement agencies in their jurisdiction used to be a given. But sadly, around the nation and in our own region of Southern California, we can find examples of elected officials who have turned their backs on officers and deputies working in their communities. They do this by refusing to pass legislation that allows the prosecution of violent criminals to the full extent of the law. They vote for measures under the guise of reform that knowingly release dangerous criminals back out onto the streets. And they contribute to a climate where victims feel completely abandoned for the sake of pushing a politically motivated agenda. The past several years have brought unique challenges, many of which I've never encountered in my 30-year career. We face a constant struggle to continue to provide key resources to our community while striving to conform to the extremely high standards set by ourselves and the public. Our men and women do great work to arrest dangerous criminals, only to see them walk free due to legislation that removes virtually all penalties for their crimes. But despite these challenges, our officers continue to hold true to their values and their commitment to uphold their oath. I know I can speak for my fellow law enforcement leaders and members of our cops when I say, as a county and as a region, we're in a great position to continue good work done by our men and women in uniform every day to keep our residents safe. The work will continue with the support of our community and our elected officials, but we need everyone's help to carry a message to those whose uninformed views and policies are a hindrance to our mission. Anyone can scroll through publicly accessible press releases of their local law enforcement agencies. You will see incident after incident of felons that are arrested in possession of firearms, who are on probation, parole, early release, and wanted for other violent crimes. Pay attention to these releases and note how many violent assailants would be in custody if we reinstated some common sense sentencing enhancements for violent repeat armed offenders. This small percentage of extremely dangerous individuals account for a large portion of the violence that terrorizes our citizens and reduces the feelings of safety and security in our neighborhoods. As a community and as a state, we must recognize and admit that our prison reform efforts and removal of criminal penalties has gone too far. They've gone beyond the intended purpose, and they have neglected the victims of violent crime, and they have devastated our communities. And while safety is crucial at all buildings and public spaces in our cities, no locations are more vulnerable than our schools. Due to the highly publicized tragedies across the nation of late, we are no longer to remain naive and errantly believe that this can't happen to us. A vital component to keeping our kids safe while they're at school is an effective utilization of a school resource officer program. We're lucky in Riverside. We have strong local support for a very robust SRO program, but due to misguided political narratives, many of the school districts throughout the state aren't so lucky. When an evil coward elects to target the most vulnerable victims by engaging in an attack on a school, every second can literally mean the difference between life and death. The presence of a well-trained armed police officer on a school campus absolutely acts as a deterrent to a would-be attacker and provides a chance for immediate action to end an immediate threat to life. Just this past week, in our area, the Ontario Police Department thwarted a would-be school shooter who had specific plans and the means to carry out a mass casualty event on a school campus. Similar stories, tragedies prevented by law enforcement, can be found across the country, and they so often include the actions of SROs. But sadly, these stories don't seem to make it to the news all the time. For these reasons and numerous others, I support the provisions of AB 3038, which would ensure all schools are staffed with at least one or more armed school resource officers. It is beyond debate that having an armed school resource officer present at each campus will increase security, safety, and prevent future tragedy. Government funds are spent on far grander scales on numerous other programs, but what cost is more justifiable than protecting our children's schools? Please stand united with us and make it clear to those in power that the safety should not be a luxury to a few. Everyone deserves a safe neighborhood to live, safe parks to play in, and safe schools to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And our last bill this morning is AB 3039. This one is a special bill, and we'll talk about that in just a second. AB 3039 will remove anti-law enforcement bias in jury selection by allowing a judge to strike a juror if they hold anti-law enforcement views or biases against the criminal justice system. This bill is in direct response to Assembly Bill 3070, which was passed by this legislature in 2020, and it allowed defense attorneys to object to prosecutors removing a juror who has expressed a bias against the police. Think about that. This policy is not only wrong, it's dangerous, as you will soon hear. Having a fair and impartial jury decide cases is a fundamental bedrock of our American justice system. Bias in any form must be rejected during the jury selection process. This law has consequences. I'm going to now introduce former San Bernardino Sheriff Deputy Megan McCarthy, who's here with us today. She was violently assaulted and nearly killed on duty by a violent thug. That man who attacked her, almost killed her with her own gun, he's walking the streets free today because of legislation like AB 3070. This bill has had devastating and harmful, dangerous consequences. I'm going to show you. Let's show what happened to Deputy McCarthy. So we're going to hold these pictures up so you can see what this guy did to her. And this is the guy that's walking around free right now while she comes and tells us her story.
Good morning. My name is Megan McCarthy, and I'm a medically retired deputy sheriff from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. On September 4th, 2019, while working as the deputy sheriff for the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, I responded to a 911 call for help from a fellow mother. Within less than a minute of arriving on scene, the suspect, her son, began to violently attack and beat me because of my job title and being a woman. He punched me over and over and over in the face and head, nearly rendering me unconscious. He overpowered me, took my gun, pointed it at my forehead, and pulled the trigger. My gun had malfunctioned, ultimately saving my life and allowing me to run for cover. He shot at my back as I ran for my life. In a moment of sheer terror, I realized that my life hung in the balance, a victim of senseless violence. May 2023 jury trial began. Despite my attack and attempted execution being caught on camera, A jury of my peers acquitted the man who tried to take my life. California Assembly Bill 3070 allowed multiple individuals to sit as jurors despite having explicit bias towards law enforcement. A jury of my peers believed I was not a victim of this crime because of the job I pledged to do, to serve and protect lives such as theirs. But I am not here to dwell on the horrors of that experience. Rather, I am here to speak out for change. My encounter with violence is not an isolated incident. Every day, countless individuals and law enforcement officers across our communities face similar threats to their safety and well-being. Whether it is walking home alone from the grocery store or simply going about their daily routines, no one should have to live in fear of becoming a victim of violence. Under Marcy's Law, the California Constitution provides victims with the following enumerated right: to be treated with fairness and respect for his or her privacy and dignity, and to be free from intimidation, harassment, and abuse throughout the criminal justice process. Assembly Bill 3070 stripped me of these rights under the California Constitution and has ultimately affected and will affect countless other lives who become re-victimized by the criminal justice system. It is for this reason that I have taken it upon myself to advocate for meaningful legislative action. Assemblyman Essayli, in collaboration with other partners, has crafted Assembly Bill 3039, removing anti-police jury bias, which will ultimately make victims of crime and the public safety community safe once again. At its core, this bill focuses on three key pillars: trust, safety, and prevention. This is not the state we all once knew. This is not the state we can leave to our children. To begin, we must hold perpetrators accountable for their actions, ensuring that justice is served and that victims receive the support they need to heal and rebuild their lives. Holding criminals accountable for their actions is paramount to ensuring justice and maintaining the safety of our communities. When individuals commit crimes, they must face the consequences of the behavior, both to deter future offenses and to provide closure and restitution to victims. We must show our community that the justice system has victims' rights in mind, not abandoning them to cater to criminal rights. AB 3039, along with AB 3037 and AB 3038, will address the root causes of violence and proposes concrete solutions to prevent future tragedies. These bills are not just a piece of paper. They represent the collective voices of survivors, advocates, and concerned citizens who refuse to accept violence as the status quo. But enacting change is no easy task. It requires courage, determination, and above all, unity. We must come together as a community, setting aside our differences and working towards a common goal: to create safer, more resilient communities for ourselves and for our future generations. I urge each and every one of you to join me in this fight for justice and accountability. Reach out to your legislators, raise your voices in support of meaningful reform, and together, let us build a future where violence has no place in our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. It's so important. This legislature likes to talk about crime statistics and mass incarceration, but they never talk about the victims. The victims have powerful stories, and they are who we are supposed to protect. We all take an oath to protect and serve, and we're supposed to be protecting victims, not criminals. So I think it's important our last speaker be from Crime Victims United, because the victims have been silenced in the state of California in the name of criminal justice reform. In order to get those policies through, they've had to shut up the victims so they don't tell their stories. Well, we're going to give them a platform today. So I will welcome Anna Berry with Crime Victims United to say a few words, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. My name is Anna Berry, and I'm with Crime Victims United as a legislative advocate. And with me today, I'd like to introduce Harriet Salerno, the founder and chair of Crime Victims United. And on behalf of Crime Victims United, I'd like to thank Assemblymember Essayli for including us today. CVU's mission is to strengthen public safety and promote balance in the criminal justice system and protect victims' rights. We're not sure when this word moved from plus column to the minus, but the lack of accountability in our criminal justice system and society as a whole is in the heart of our current lawlessness. And by restoring it, we can begin to put victims first. We applaud Assemblyman Essayli's efforts to enhance the safety of Californians, both on our streets, in our schools, through our laws as the ones he is announcing today. They restore accountability and fairness in our criminal justice system, and these bills are exactly what California needs. Crime Victims United has always fought to put victims first, and these are the bills today that victims' voices need. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. We'll now turn to questions if there are any questions. Good? Question? No? Okay. I don't see a question. We'll be available afterwards. I want to thank you guys for being here today. And this is just the beginning. Now we're going to try to pass this through the legislature, but ultimately we need the public's help. So if the public is watching, public safety is a number one concern, but it is not the number one concern of the people behind me in this building unless you call them and make it so. So I ask the public to reach out to the legislators and support these bills. Thank you all for being here today. We're going to do a quick photo.